Steve McQueen redlined the engine. The tachometer needle slammed into the red zone and stayed there. James Garner watched through his helmet visor as McQueen's Porsche 906 screamed down the straightaway at suicide speed. Then McQueen's voice cut through the radio static. "The track doesn't know your name, Jim. Only your nerve." The engine note climbed beyond safe limits. If you respect the real Steve McQueen, subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy. April 1966. Willow Springs International Raceway, California. Mojave Desert heat shimmering off asphalt that had been baking in 90-degree sun since dawn. Wind carrying dust and sage across the 2.5-mile road course. The air thick with high-octane racing fuel, burning rubber, and tension. Steve McQueen, 36 years old, career exploding but heart belonging to anything with wheels and an engine, fresh off the Cincinnati Kid. But none of that Hollywood gold meant anything here. Stripped down to Nomex fireproof racing suit and bell helmet, he was just another driver trying to find the line between control and chaos. James Garner, 38 years old, just finishing Grand Prix where he'd played Formula One driver Pete Aaron, convincingly enough to fool real racers. 2 months of intensive preparation with professional drivers and technical advisors. Natural talent meeting Hollywood preparation. 2 different approaches to the same obsession. McQueen raced like a man possessed. Garner raced like a man prepared. The Porsche 906 sat in the pit lane like a predator at rest, engine cover removed, exposing the flat-6 motor that looked more like precision industrial art than automotive engineering. Air-cooled, horizontally opposed design. Naturally aspirated. 210 horsepower that arrived with surgical precision. Racing machine disguised as streetcar, built for one thing: going fast around corners. Fiberglass bodywork over tubular space frame. Suspension geometry refined at the Nürburgring. The kind of car that demanded respect but rewarded commitment. McQueen ran his hands over the engine components with reverence. Checking oil lines for leaks. Testing electrical connections. Verifying every system was ready for punishment. 3 weeks of preparation had gone into setting up the suspension specifically for Willow Springs. Corner weights, tire pressures, gear ratios calculated for optimal acceleration. "Beautiful machine," Garner said, approaching with his own bell helmet tucked under his arm like a fighter pilot heading to his aircraft. "Factory preparation?" "Some," McQueen replied without looking up from his inspection. "But mostly me and my mechanic Haig Altunian. 3 weeks getting the suspension geometry exactly right for this track surface. Different setup for every track. You know these corners that intimately." McQueen straightened slowly, those pale blue eyes that had made him famous now hidden behind racing goggles. But the intensity was unmistakable even through tinted plastic. "I know what it takes to survive them. And what it takes to do more than survive." 50 feet away, Garner's Shelby Cobra 427 rumbled to life with American muscle authority. 425 horsepower of Ford V8 wrapped in AC car's bodywork designed for much smaller engines, louder than the Porsche, more dramatic, more intimidating. Sound that vibrated through chest cavities. Carroll Shelby's masterpiece of combining existing components into something that exceeded the sum of its parts. "Impressive sound," McQueen observed, listening to the exhaust note with professional attention. "Carroll knows how to build them." "Should be fast enough," Garner replied with the confidence of someone who'd just spent months working with racing professionals. "Fast enough for what?" "Fast enough to keep up." McQueen smiled without warmth. "Jim, keeping up isn't racing. Racing is finding out who's willing to go beyond keeping up when keeping up isn't enough." The challenge hung in the desert air like smoke. Garner had come to Willow Springs expecting a friendly competition between 2 actors who shared a passion for motorsports. McQueen had come expecting war. "What are we really doing here, Steve?" McQueen climbed into the Porsche cockpit with the fluid motion of someone who'd done it thousands of times. Adjusted the mirrors. checked the belts, verified that every control was exactly where muscle memory expected it to be. We're finding out the difference between playing a racing driver and being one. The words landed like a physical blow. Garner's jaw tightened slightly. I put in my time preparing for Grand Prix, worked with real drivers, learned real technique. Good. Then you'll understand when I show you what real driving looks like. Both engines fired simultaneously. The Porsche's flat six singing with mechanical precision, the Cobra's V8 thundering with barely contained violence. Two different philosophies of power meeting on neutral ground. They rolled out onto the track for warm-up laps, Garner taking the racing line that his Grand Prix technical advisors had taught him: smooth, consistent, professional technique applied with movie star precision. McQueen took a different approach. He drove like someone learning the track's secrets through direct conversation. Each corner explored at increasing speed, each braking point tested until the tires began to protest. Not reckless, methodical. Like a surgeon mapping anatomy before making the first cut. After 3 laps, they pulled into the staging area, both men understanding that warm-up was over and something more serious was about to begin. Ready for some real running? McQueen asked over the radio, his voice carrying that flat tone that people who knew him had learned to respect. Define real running. No racing lines from textbooks. No safety margins from driving schools. Just 2 men and 2 machines finding out which combination has more commitment, when commitment is all that separates winning from losing. Garner understood immediately. This wasn't going to be about lap times or proper technique or anything that could be measured by outside observers. This was about discovering who would lift off the throttle first, when physics demanded a choice between backing down and breaking through to something beyond normal driving. You're talking about dangerous driving, Steve. I'm talking about racing, Jim. If it's not dangerous, it's just fast driving. And fast driving is what they teach in schools. The green flag dropped invisibly. No officials timing laps, no scoring equipment. Just 2 engines launched toward the first corner with everything their drivers could extract. Garner got the better start. The Cobra's massive torque advantage pulled him ahead through the first 100 yards. But McQueen had anticipated this. Let Garner lead into turn 1, then use the Porsche's superior handling to stay close through the technical complex. By turn 3, they were side by side. Garner's superior power offset by McQueen's superior willingness to use every inch of track surface. The Cobra pulled ahead on the back straight. Garner using every horsepower Carroll Shelby had engineered. But McQueen stayed close enough to use the Porsche's aerodynamic advantage. Close enough to demonstrate that power meant nothing without nerve. Turn 8, the fastest corner on the track. Flat out in most cars. Terrifying in fast cars. Both drivers approached at speeds that made reasonable men reconsider their life choices. Garner lifted slightly. Not much. Maybe 5%. But enough. McQueen didn't lift at all. The Porsche pulled alongside the Cobra through the corner, both cars dancing on the edge of adhesion, both drivers discovering exactly where the line was between heroic and stupid. That's when McQueen made his decision. The decision that separated racers from drivers and legends from actors. He pushed the Porsche engine beyond its design parameters, beyond manufacturer recommendations, beyond the red zone that engineers had painted red for very specific reasons related to metallurgy and thermal dynamics. The tachometer needle climbed past 6,000 RPM, past 6,500, into the red zone where connecting rods began to stress and valve springs started to float. The engine note changed from mechanical music to controlled violence, harmonic precision replaced by the sound of metal being pushed beyond its intended limits. Oil temperature climbing, water temperature climbing, internal engine pressures exceeding safe parameters. Every system stressed beyond the margins that Porsche engineers had built into their calculations. But still pulling. still accelerating. Still demonstrating that sometimes the difference between winning and losing was the willingness to destroy your equipment in pursuit of speed. Garner watched in fascination and growing horror as McQueen held the throttle flat while the engine screamed mechanical protests that could be heard over both exhaust systems combined. The sound of expensive German engineering being tortured for the sake of a few additional horsepower. "Steve, you're going to blow that motor. Back it down before you throw a rod." "Maybe. That's a $20,000 engine you're destroying. Back it down. You're past Redlined by 500 RPM. "I know exactly where I am." The Porsche pulled ahead. Not because it was mechanically superior to the Cobra, but because McQueen was demonstrating something that couldn't be taught in racing schools or learned from technical advisors. The willingness to risk total mechanical failure for the possibility of victory. To sacrifice the machine for the sake of the mission. Engine temperature climbing toward dangerous levels. Oil pressure fluctuating as the system struggled to maintain adequate lubrication at RPM levels that the engineers had never intended. Every mechanical component operating beyond safe parameters. But still functioning, still producing power, still pulling ahead. Garner had a choice: follow McQueen into mechanical suicide, or accept second place to someone who valued winning more than preservation. He chose preservation. McQueen held the throttle flat for another 10 seconds. 10 seconds that probably cost the engine 1,000 hours of life. 10 seconds that demonstrated the difference between professional technique and racing obsession. When he finally lifted, the Porsche was 3 car lengths ahead and the engine was still running. Damaged, probably, definitely stressed, but still functioning, still pulling. They completed the lap with McQueen leading and Garner following at a respectful distance, both men understanding that something fundamental had been decided. In the pits, they shut down their engines and climbed out slowly. Garner removed his helmet first. "That was impressive, Steve, and completely insane." McQueen removed his helmet with deliberate care. His face showed no emotion, no satisfaction, no regret. Just the neutral expression of someone who'd done what needed doing. "Jim, you drive like someone who learned racing from experts. Good technique, professional approach. Thank you. But experts teach you how to go fast safely. They don't teach you how to go fast when safety isn't an option." McQueen popped the Porsche's engine cover. The flat 6 was still ticking as it cooled. Still intact despite being tortured beyond its design limits. See, racing isn't about being the best driver. It's about being the driver who's willing to pay the highest price for speed. And sometimes that price is the car itself. Garner looked at his own Cobra. Pristine, undamaged, capable of many more track days. You could have destroyed that engine. Could have, didn't, but you were willing to. That's the difference between us, Jim. You race cars. I race myself. The truth of it settled over both men like desert dust. Garner had approached the track with respect for the machinery, for the sport, for the proper way of doing things. McQueen had approached it with respect only for the question of who wanted to win more. What if the engine had blown? McQueen smiled for the first time that day. Then I'd have found out if the car could coast across the finish line faster than you could drive. Later, mechanics would examine the Porsche engine and find stress fractures in 3 connecting rods. Metal fatigue that suggested the motor had been seconds away from catastrophic failure when McQueen finally lifted the throttle. Garner went on to star in more racing films. Always technically correct, always professionally prepared, always respected by real drivers for his commitment to authenticity. McQueen went on to Le Mans, to real racing where the stakes were measured in championships rather than paychecks, where technique mattered less than the willingness to explore the space beyond technique. The difference between them wasn't skill, it was philosophy. Garner understood racing as sport. McQueen understood it as survival training. Years later, Garner would say in interviews, "Steve was the real thing. He didn't act like a racing driver. He was a racing driver who happened to make movies." McQueen never spoke publicly about the Willow Springs session, but those close to him said he kept the damaged connecting rods from the Porsche engine in his office. Not as trophies, but as reminders that everything had a breaking point, including himself. The lesson wasn't about cars or speed or technique. It was about commitment. About discovering what you were willing to sacrifice, to find out who you really were when everything safe was stripped away. Steve McQueen redlined the engine and told James Garner, "The track doesn't know your name, only your nerve." Subscribe to Steve McQueen Untold Legacy for stories they never told you.